Hello, guys. Welcome. So I've always wanted to learn to program. It's always been a goal of mine to learn, and I just finally decided, it's time I put some time aside each day and learn. Even if I just do a small amount a day, it's better than nothing. And I decided to learn C. Most people say, it's better to do Python or JavaScript or whatever, like a bit more easier languages. But I've always wanted to do a more lower level thing. I want to know how the machine works, how to utilize the resources, how to, what's pointers and all this complex concepts. It's super interesting for me. So I'm a complete beginner. I know absolutely nothing. And I just want to make like a devlog where maybe other people also learning can learn with me. I think that could be pretty sweet. So I'm not going in blind with nothing. I've got one resource that I'm going to be using, and that's this book. It's the C Programming: A Modern Approach by Kane King. I'm going to be using this book to help me through all these concepts and stuff. And I hope, I can go through this. So I did read through chapter one. Chapter one is just like a history of C, how everything came into existence and languages that was based on C. C is where it all started. I feel like I'm sure there's other programming languages, but I feel like C was the game changer, like the foundation. And the fact that it's a low level language is what excites me. I want to learn a low level language. Um, so yeah, I've read through chapter one. It's just there's not much programming going on. Just like a quick introduction, if you want to put it like that, of how stuff works and why and all that. So the first thing I see that's different between C and say JavaScript is C is compiled. So you write code, that code gets then gets compiled into machine understandable code, and the machine then just does what you told it to do. So I'm not gonna go too much into chapter one since it wasn't there wasn't a lot to cover. But then we get to chapter two. I did finish. I wouldn't say finish. I went through all the reading and coding along sections basically, and I got to the projects. I've done the exercises, and I've got to this projects. So I was thinking of doing all these projects together with you guys, and then we can learn together, see how things go. But like a quick rundown of chapter two. My setup currently is Visual Studio 2026, and what I did was um, to be able to run C code is if you install the desktop development with C++, you get you get like the compiler to compile C code as well. The only thing is when you create a new project, you're gonna select an empty C++ project, and then you'll just create a new item, which will be a CPP file. You'll just rename the extension to C. That's basically all you do. So there is another way where you download the GCC or whatever the compiler is that you can use, and you can do it that way. But I found this much less of a headache. I'll maybe later on swap over to the other method, but for now, this is what works for me. This feels good. And then also using this method, there's some problems I ran into during when I went through all this coding together sections, and I'll show you guys now. So let's do the pun, because that's what I started, yeah, just to give you guys an example. So we go include standard input output header, I assume. I think .h is for header. So I don't really know what header files are yet, but I think it's probably like a library, like the standard library. That's what I'm assuming. So I'm just going to assume for now it's a library, but we're going to be learning more of that later on. I hope. I believe. Let me say I believe. So the input output library, the standard one we use here, is mainly for, well, the only two things that I know now that we use it for. Okay, let's just get this done. The only things I use it for now is the print f function to see or not to see. That is the question. I think that's the pun. To see or not to see. That is the question. Yes. And then you do a \n for new line. So when it prints this, after it prints the string, it makes a new line. It's like you press enter on the keyboard. Because how it works is, if you don't put this and you say you print another line, so let's just remove this. And we put it here. But we remove this. So we would assume that this is two lines. But the way the compiler does it is one line. So you would then, as soon as you put the new line, it breaks them up. You see, makes a new line. So that's what that's for. So you're going to see this a lot. But in any case, so printf is the one function that I know for now. So let's say enter a number and then scan f will then take the number. So I'll get to that later, but let me just show you quickly. Let's make an integer of x, and we do percentage d. So percentage d, I don't know why completely yet, but percent d is when you capture a integer, and if you do a float, which is a decimal point number, you do percent f for float. So that almost makes a bit more sense because it's an f for float, but the d for int is weird to me. But and then so you basically telling this function this is an int, and we reference the x. So take the number that you get from scan and give it to X. That's basically what's happening here. So now the issue that I picked up is you get an error when you run it like this because of scanf. It says it might be unsafe. So you could use, like it says there, scanf underscore s, and then it would be fine. But if you want to keep close to the book, there's a thing that I saw. I Googled a bit, and you can say define, and then you'll see there's like a small string here saying CRT secure, no warnings. So you just type it exactly like that, underscore CRT underscore secure underscore no underscore warnings. And that would allow you to run the project. But you'll get this. I don't know completely why it says this now. Return value ignored. Maybe it's because I'm not using it. But I just wanted to show you the scan if solution. So if you run into that problem with the same setup as I'm using, you could just use this define and it will get rid of those issues. So chapter 2 starts on like a basic simple like the pun thing we just did now, and here it talks about the standard input output library. So that was that. Goes over directives, integrated development environments, and IDE. So in my case, it's Visual Studio. You can use a lot of other IDEs. All depends on what your personal preference. Functions. So functions is basically like the main that we have. The main we have here. This is a function. So statements. It's the print or all that. Comments. It's straightforward. If you type in something with that, so double / is a comment, and then you can say variable containing a number index, just to describe for you, for yourself, or somebody else that might work on your project in the future. If you want to make a note of something small, there's also the multi-line one where you do / asterisk, and then you can put some code between. Yeah, this is multi-line if need be. So you can do it like that as well. Could be useful. Variables is like we spoke about now with int and float. That's the only two that I've used so far, is integers and floating point numbers. So it says here, like arithmetic on floating point numbers is slower, but it also is a bit inaccurate, as I can see here, thanks to rounding error. Then it says here, you need to declare variables before using it. So you must say int x and then use x. Yeah, you cannot try and use x, yeah, and then int x down. Yeah, you must declare first. Assignment. So that's giving a variable a value. So you're assigning a value to a variable, but you can also assign the same time you declare. So you can say int age equals to 20. Straightforward. So you can also do it that way. And then we're gonna I went through this. This is like a small program that it shows you to compute the dimensional weight of a box by using the volume and all that. So I did do this as well. And then this is where it goes into doing inputs, reading like the scanf. This is where I started running into the problems with that this no secure warnings. And then it goes about names for constraints. So constraints is like how I understand it is like a constant value. It doesn't change. So you also define it at the top. Define. And usually it's all caps, so I'd say pi. And you don't say equals to, it's just 3.142 or whatever, you know. Or you can say define tax rates, and it could be 15 for 15%. So, and then you can use that values here. So, say int amount is equals to 100. You can plus the tax rate. You know, it's just a simple example. So you can then use that. That's like a consistent value. It's a value that you know won't change at all. So that's what this constraints, and it's usually all caps with underscore. I'm sure there's other naming conventions, but I feel like that's a good one for me. Then it runs you through a small program to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius using two constants, the freezing point and the scale factor, so that you can see it in action. Then identifiers, it's like names for your variables. There's some keywords that you cannot use because it's either a function or a method name or whatever. Layouts of a program. This is something I need to go over again because I'm not 100% sure about tokens. It seems like it's function names like brackets, commas, variables, semicolons, you know, stuff like that. Some Q&A stuff. And then we get to this point where I got to the exercises, and now I need to do programming projects. So this is where I'm at now. So I just wanted to make this video quickly to show you my setup, where I've gotten so far, give you like a quick rundown. I know this video is a bit long, just me talking nonsense, not really doing anything or teaching anything or showing or learning really, but just going through what I've done so far and showing you how my setup works for Visual Studio and how I get to run my code. And in the next video, I'm going to start and I'm going to try and do all this in one video. Hopefully it's going to be a bit like at least under 20 minutes as well. So yeah, if you stayed through this horrible 20 minutes of me just japping, I really appreciate your time. You could have watched much more professional programmers just blasting away coding some amazing stuff. Instead, you watched me. So I appreciate that, and have a lovely one. See you in the next one.